Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is the podcast where we share our thoughts after we've seen something. We have a very special episode. It's something that's been 20 years in the making, and it's not one of my terrible movies that I love. It's something very fantastic from Adult Swim, and I'm excited to talk about it. But first, who am I? Not in a philosophical sense, just who am I as your host? I am John Garcia. Joining me, our usual co-host, Ryan King.
Are we just going to do like voices the whole time? It's good that it's not just you and me, because it would just be like 21 and 23, like the both of us just going back and forth.
Yeah, we would kick off by singing Mars and getting our gear on and honking the horn in the car.
It's such a classic scene.
It really is. And that voice you just heard is my good friend, Jimmy Sparks.
Yep. Hey,
Jimmy. Welcome on. Happy to
thanks.
have you.
Glad to be here.
And also joining us, the other half of the dynamic duo that is Winter Sparks, Erika Winters.
Hello. Glad to be here. Talk about a wonderful, wonderful story.
It's just so beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, and the movie that we're talking about and the show, the whole series, we're gonna go in from the movie that came out recently, and we'll talk about the series as we go. Is the Venture Bros, Radiant is the blood of the Baboon Heart.
I'm going off the grid. Disappearance.
Where is Hank? We have to find him!
Preparation.
Doc, we got a huge problem with the new product. We're launching tomorrow, gentlemen. Get to work.
Execution.
I'm in.
Minions! Battle stations!
Betrayal.
Gentlemen, what can Arch do for you?
Conspiracy.
This is a threat against our very foundation. We must protect our collective from this clear combination.
Negotiation.
I shall take it from here.
Skedaddling.
You're gonna have to run away.
What? Haphazardly.
Jackson! Something big just went kablooey 5 blocks south! Pull your team and check it out!
Blow-uppery. Tight pantsedness.
Stairs!
The Venture Brothers. Radiant is the blood of the Baboon Heart.
Ah! Son of... That could have been a baby's head. Now do you get it?
What a name.
That name goes places, just like the movie.
It really does.
Yeah.
It means everything and nothing at the same time.
It's so beautiful how Doc Hammer and Jackson Public can create. I think there's like all of this in Gargantua too or something. I can't remember what the name of the other one is. Just like their names go hard. They don't even
titles. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't fuck around.
Nope.
Yeah, Radiant is the blood of the Baboon Heart is for the context of everybody out there, the Venture Brothers movie that caps off the entire series, because Venture Bros, it ran on Adult Swim for a really long time. It started as this Johnny Quest parody about a super science family and their goofy adventures, then evolved over the course of 7 seasons into a rich series of absurd and endearing character development and world building. It was canceled before they could get season 8 actually in production, and kind of as a consolation prize and a way to finally make a little bit of money off the death whale of this series. Doc Hammer and Jackson Public were allowed a budget to make a movie to give fans enough of what we needed to move on with our lives and stop wondering what would have happened.
Yeah, some closure.
Yeah. I'll just say right off the bat, for anybody listening to this, if you haven't seen it yet and you're worried about spoilers, we're going to spoil the hell out of it. I mean, that's going to just happen. And if you're the one thing you really want to know is, should I watch it or not as a Venture Bros fan? You should watch it. Like, yeah. I think that this was a fantastic of a conclusion as we could get under these circumstances. There's a lot of other stuff that I learned about what season 8 might have had and how this might have tied into it.
Oh, really?
That I was like, oh, sad. But with what we were given, I got a lot of good laughs. I got some sentimental moments. And there were enough goofy gags for me to be like, all right, good. And then also a lot of character closure that I needed. So
Like dessert.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't want to really talk about much else right now in terms of my take. I would like to kick it over to our guests first. Jimmy, what did you think? First impressions of this movie?
And what's your experience with Venture Brothers?
Yeah, so definitely starting out, I've seen the entire show a couple times through. I started watching it in college. I think probably college age is a really good age to start it because, I think you're a bit more mature at that point. I remember seeing vividly the commercials of Brock Sampson like kicking people's ass. I think the commercial was cut from like the garage sale episode, and he's like beating the shit out of some cartoon villain who's got like a socket for a face.
Yes.
Like an electrical socket. That always stuck in my mind. So yeah, it's a fantastic show. I love it, and I was very sad when season 7 ended because I just wanted more, and I knew even if it didn't get canceled, it was going to be a long time until something new came out, just because that's how this show goes. And so very eager to watch this movie, and when I finally did, I was very happy with it. And yeah, it was lovely. It did a lot to not just close off things, but make me feel satisfied that they didn't like the closure they brought wasn't just pandering or like to really close off everything. And
there wasn't like it wasn't the entire ensemble of Venture Bros came back together for one last ride. There wasn't like all of that. There's so many characters in this that I was like, I don't know where that character is right now, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
It focuses on who it needs to focus on. Well, Erika, what about you? How did you get into Venture Brothers?
Blue was the one who introduced me.
Hey, it's John here, pausing the episode from the editing booth. I wanted to quickly provide context that Blue is the nickname Erika uses when referring to Jimmy. So if you hear it again, now you know. Back to the episode.
The only memory I have of Venture Bros before I actually saw the show, like as an adult, was the occasional like nights that I would stay up late to watch Inuyasha on Adult Swim. Sometimes you'd see like the commercials for Harvey Birdman and
C Lab 2021.
C Lab, yeah, exactly. And then if like Venture Bros would sometimes like appear there, but like never really. I was just like, okay, that's not. I'm interested in this dog boy anime, kind of thing. I'm not interested in this like Scooby-Doo looking show. But I had known like of the name like Venture Bros. I actually thought that it was more like Archer, like where they were a lot more adult people. And then when we finally like watched it, he sat me down and had us watch the show.
It was like what, 2 years ago maybe?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. We sat down and we watched it over a period of like, a couple weeks or so. And it was just really fantastic. And it was really funny and great. And it was a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be, especially going into like the first season. I feel like it didn't really, it had its moments, but it was still kind of like writing that like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if, kind of setup. And then as the seasons kind of went on, I was like, oh, wow, this is actually like great. I'm rooting for everybody in this show. Like there's not a single character I don't like. I had already come into after it had been announced that it had been canceled because I was like, what, like 2017, 2018 or something like that.
Yeah.
So going into it, like I already knew like, oh, isn't the show already over? I thought this was done. And then it was like, actually it's been canceled and I'll never get that closure. But we had heard about the movie being made,
rumors of
the rumors of the movie.
Yeah, there was a bubbling.
Yeah, there was bubbling. And then we just kind of were waiting for that, and we were really surprised when it came out because we actually thought it was going to be out a little bit later than it actually did.
Yeah, me too.
There was like it didn't feel like there was any advertisement.
There was no pomp and circumstance.
They literally dropped it on like a doorstep, and
I found out that it had been released on the same day that the show was being removed from the
tax write-off.
The tax write-off, yeah. The channel formerly known as HBO Max. So you can watch the movie on HBO/Max, but you will soon not be able to watch the entire series of the show.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. But the movie itself, I agree. It's a total must watch. Like if you want to sit and like live with your headcanons for the rest of your life and not get any closure, sure, skip it, whatever. But it did a great job at tying up like the most important loose strands and not being too like fan servicey, I feel.
Yeah.
Like they could have done a bunch of really over the top stuff to like, parade the greatest, like, oh, remember when this happened?
Yeah, bring Dr. Henry Killinger back. Why not?
Exactly. Why
Fuck it.
not? Yeah, exactly. But they didn't do that. So it felt very good. It felt well paced. And even though like it didn't end with like a flat line of like, and that was the story of the Venture Bros. It still felt like even if you never get to see another thing of the Venture Bros, like, I think it feels true to how the show has always been, where it's just like about their life as opposed to their like story,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ryan, what did you think?
Yeah. Luckily they have gone back and said they're not taking the show off Max. That was some sort of confusion, but
Cowards.
they
No,
already
just kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Wait, what?
they've taken off Infinity Train and other random shit off of there anyway. Like I would like to talk today some about like the future of this type of adult animation, what its future is, and a little bit of like streaming. Just like my thing about this is buy it. Like
Yeah.
don't just watch it, buy it. Like support what this is. Try somehow to put your dollars to it and make some kind of message about this is the kind of thing you want to see. Venture Brothers is like the most aimed at me thing possible. I feel like I know all the Hanna-Barbera properties, like the ones that are buried under, out in the desert. I've watched that Hanna-Barbera stuff when I was a kid. When Cartoon Network came out, it wasn't on my channel, it wasn't on my cable, and I was calling and demanding it. And I would get like VHSs from my grandmother as she would record a whole day of Cartoon Network,
Nice.
and I would watch it. Yeah, and Space
Bootleg
Ghost,
cartoons.
yeah, and like Space Ghost was this like big leap to something else. Like it's this experimental like inside joke feel that Space Ghost had really hooked me as well. And so then I started staying up late for the early Adult Swim stuff, and in college we kind of just watched everything. You said 20 years ago, John, and I was like, oh man, this can't. And then it is. So it makes me feel really old to hear that. I didn't watch it initially for whatever reason, but we tended to watch like everything that was on Adult Swim. Like we would just turn it on at night at our fraternity house and just watch whatever. And I think the first episode that I remember watching was the one where they end up going to Mexico, where Doc is
That's
teaching.
First episode ever. I think the pilot episode.
Yeah.
Is that the pilot?
That is the pilot.
Or is that... I thought the pilot was the one where the guy like jerks off onto the laser or whatever.
He wasn't trying to steal it. He was masturbating like a teenager with a fast internet connection.
Master what? Like an evil master plan?
No, boys. Otaku Sensori isn't evil. He's a technology fetishist.
Oh, that is the pilot. You're right. The pilot is the one with the...
which is a little bit
techno-
rougher.
Raid
Yeah.
destroys the city, right? Yeah.
The Techno Ninja.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I think it's the second. It's like who knows what order they put him out on. Back then, you just had to turn on TV and then it was on.
What's that about?
Yeah, that's weird. So yeah, and Johnny Quest was a huge, like that was one of the ones that I really liked. I haven't watched the Johnny Quest reboot. Nobody knows what the fuck that was but me. So the fact that this is just like absolutely initially skewering that type of animation, and then to go further, like I agree, as the seasons went on, it just got so much deeper and deeper. All about the DVDs and then eventually Blu-rays that I got. I listened to the commentary on those and like got to know Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, and they would bring on their guests. The voice work on this has always been amazing. Really, I love all the voice actors on this, and this adds a few more classic actors on top of it in this movie. So yeah, absolutely disappointed to see is it kind of every season it was a feeling of like, is it going to continue? I will watch their Twitter for update of like, or X, whatever the fuck it is now. I would wait for their updates of like, oh, are they going to get in the, are they working on the animation yet? Or they got the approval for this or whatever. And so, yeah, when eventually it kind of canceled, the fact that it had been so long, kind of just felt like an inevitability. Animation was changing, the channels were changing, streaming was the thing. And like, I was disappointed, but kind of knew like it was eventually going to happen. The rough part was that last season was such a big growth for the series, and had gone so much further and introduced so many more interesting things and taking the characters to just sort of end very cliffhanger on so many different threads. And I do feel like this movie closed those off. Like I feel like that was good. It kind of got it to reset I guess. Like, it kind of leaves it in sort of a reset sitcom-y way where you're like, okay, we kind of closed what we needed to, but it's still there and there will be future adventures. Absolutely, like, yeah, I had a blast. I loved it. Like, I watched it twice already just because I'm like, it's Venture. Like, I have to go back and catch the jokes I missed. The only thing that is bad is that I can see the season that's supposed to be there.
Yep.
And certain bits that I'm like, oh man, that was going to be more. I know that could have been more. There's a style to their comedy where they let things run to kind of sometimes get a little uncomfortable that you kind of can't do when you're trying to pace through. Like, we got to get through the movie. And so we kind of can't leave something and like kind of make it terrible and then bring it back to funny again. When you kind of are just like, no, we need to be funny. We need to get to the next thing. But yeah, no, still absolutely, like, if you're a Venture fan, you watch it. There's no question. And I don't believe that my headcanon can ever touch the headcanon that I know that the creators have. They have sheets and sheets on characters that are in the background for 5 seconds of like who they are and where they came from and all that. And yeah, just like, I'm like, I love that. I love and it is that inside joke feel of like, you're getting a glimpse into this world that they have that's hilarious and you want to know more. So yeah, sad to probably see it go. But yeah, no, it was a good send off.
You just talked about how, you're a big fan of Hanna-Barbera. That got you into Venture Bros in a way. Like, you can recognize a lot of the references here. I sat down with our other co-host Dixon recently and tried to watch a few episodes of Harvey Birdman. And that show is so condensed with Hanna-Barbera DNA that it is impenetrable from somebody who's never seen a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. And he had, I think, an okay time because some of the gags were funny-ish, but the rest of it was like, I just don't even know what the fuck's going on. But the Venture Bros, I showed Sasha. Sasha has only watched actively, I would say, half of the series because for the first half of the series, she fucking hated it. She actively was like, this is a dumb show. I don't want to watch this. And I was like, just sit down and watch it with me for however long. And as the canon developed, she got way more engrossed. So like, Erika, to your point, like the characters, I mean, Doc Hammer and Jackson Public are on record saying the first season they wrote not even knowing if there would be a second season. And so they just didn't care. And then when they actually were like greenlit for a second season, they're like, oh fuck, now we got to do something with these characters and actually bring it back. And it's like, they're just constantly piecing stuff together to the where even this movie has the reference to the first episode in Mexico when Hank is like, Ma Venture didn't raise no fools. And Dean's like, we don't have a mom, Hank. But it ties in emotionally, just like the Problem Light does too. And the later seasons, it's wild how they will reappropriate things that were initially just gags or plot devices for other episodes and they expand them in this crazy way.
More than just a callback.
And I love the characters that that they, after writing it and like laughing about it, they just kind of kept going. Like, it was like, oh, we'll write this one-off character, and then it's like, that guy's funny. And then they bring it back, and they're like, this guy's really funny. Let's just keep bringing this character back like over and over again. And then eventually they just become a character, like a main character.
Is there any character that you would want to be in the movie? That you were like, I really wish even just a tiny cameo from them. I'd be like, it'd be kind of nice.
I think I have an answer to that isn't right on the nose because he was in the movie, but and I think it kind of goes back to what Ryan was saying, where you can see there was more of an episode there or something they could have gone through, and that's really Billy Quizboy. He's easily one of my favorite characters. I find his earnestness and his sweetness really, like, I don't know, funny and endearing, and I just like that character a lot.
There's no way I'm standing in front of an anything right.
Single parent. Those boys need me. I am their rock. Oh, look at me. I have not lived enough, for I have never tasted the flower of a woman.
What do you mean?
Yeah, tasted a flower? Is that a direct metaphor?
Because I don't take many trips down south myself.
You guys are disgusting. No, I mean, I haven't sampled the fruits of the fairer sex. What's with the poetry, Wordsworth? Just say it. Say, I am a virgin.
I know it.
Billy, that makes you the best candidate to take a ray blast. You have nothing to lose. You've never done anything. The way I look at it, it's not even murder. It's a very late abortion.
Him and Pete White, didn't really get to do much because I feel like the script cuts and stuff. I feel like they probably had more going on with fixing the helper pod.
Helper pod. That's
pod.
what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say Billy Quizboy. I would have loved more of his hijinks, but
I can't remember her name because as has been a couple of years since I watched the show. So, but Dr. Orpheus's daughter,
Triana.
Triana, yeah.
I don't get it.
It's an ego thing. My dad thinks that if the Outrider can travel through hell, he can too.
Isn't the Outrider married to your mom?
Yeah. I only met him once. I was 8.
Well, if I was your dad, and you were your mom, and the you that wasn't your mom was another girl, I would never let anyone take the you mom.
That would be really sweet. It wasn't so confusing.
I'm sorry. Ooh, can I pet your pussy? Your pussy hates me.
she like disappeared to go and like join a coven, if I remember correctly, like to go train under magic with her mom. I think it would have just been interesting to have seen like because they're just like, yep, that's what she went to do, and like she was important to like Dean, and like it would have been kind of interesting to see like how Dean would anti-Riz himself with Triana now that he's emotionally scarred himself because he what
Stole his
his brother's trust.
betrayed his brother's stole his girl.
Yeah.
And
what's the thing Jefferson Twilight says? He poached the pootie.
Should have thought of that before you poached the booty. Stealing your own brother's girlfriend, man. That's low down.
Yeah, something like so that would have been kind of cool to see like him be like, oh shit, I can't believe, because I think he was pretty like into her.
Yeah.
So like thinking about it from the perspective, like I can't believe I also emotionally betrayed Triana, some kind of really dweeby.
There would have been a really cool moment to have him come into, because what Orpheus used to go and consult with his master in the closet,
right?
Mhm.
And it would have been cool to have Dean have to go seek out Triana in like that same kind of situation where she's in the void training or something like that and getting an emotional conversation there. That'd have been interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, Ryan, was there anybody that you were like, I wish this person? St. Cloud's technically in this. St. Cloud has a YouTube channel where he uploads 1960s bikini movies.
I didn't catch that. That's really funny.
Yeah, that's one of those
that
like
makes perfect sense.
blink and you miss it. Yeah, I think that it's like there are a lot of like very tertiary characters that either you get a glimpse of them, or it's just like it would be something else to add in that it's like I wish we could get them back. But I do think that a lot of the things that I love are the things that would have just taken up too much time. So those really really side characters that really are just like the joke, because it's like we got a little bit of time with everybody, but it's not like we spent time with like Shore Leave.
More Shore Leave,
We
please.
didn't really spend time with them. I agree. Like Quizboy and Billy and White, like they're there, but we don't really spend time with them. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff where you see them, but it just sort of it passes. It'd be funny to bring back Dr. Z and Action Johnny to like.
Yeah.
And what is your relation to John?
Why must you keep calling him John? He is Johnny, the pesky son of my arch enemy. And since he is dead, Johnny is all I have.
I don't even remember where they left off.
Oh, well, we love John, too. Unfortunately, it's not visiting hours. If you'd like to write him a note, we could give it to him.
All right. I will get you, Johnny.
That is so sweet.
Z is probably dead by now. He was already.
I just remember Action Johnny had like a meltdown or some kind of
Yeah, him and all the other young boy adventurers.
Yeah, they were like an
that,
Alcoholics Anonymous-esque thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was I guess the character for me that I kind of wish there was more time with was Sergeant Hatred. Like I hated Sergeant Hatred when he came on initially. I was not a fan.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to not like
and
him.
part of it was, they took my Brock. Like I need my Brock Sampson.
Same reason Hank didn't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how like Hank was the surrogate or like the stand-in for us as the audience who wouldn't like Hatred, but eventually coming around to him, like he just kept trying, and I was like, all right, yeah, he's growing on me. And then the shit that he did was just, it got funnier and funnier. And his crisis with Princess Tiny Feet was like its own thing.
Yeah.
It's like, he really grew on me. And so I wanted to see, because I went back and I watched the last episode of the last season, and he that entire episode he spends trying to smooth talk the woman at the counter in the hospital so he can go
Yes.
see Hank.
Yep.
And he like is trying to bribe her, and then he's like, we both work reception desks. It's something we could do. And then eventually he just defaults to like, this slab of meat is yours if you want it. And she's trying to seduce. She's like, please get him away from me to Dean. And I love how like earnest and just unaware he is of some of that shit. So yeah, I would have loved to see a little more of him in this, but was happy that he got his paces in, got to run up and down the stairs.
Yeah, literal paces. Yeah.
He kind of got the same joke though, of that like having a heart attack. We didn't really get any other. Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't too much else. So I guess going beyond like what character would you like to see? What is it that you gravitate towards most in the Venture Brothers? Like, because the characters themselves are endearing. There are also themes of like being a failure and trying to succeed. Yeah. A family, like dysfunctional family elements, like these certain dynamics in it. And of course, Hanna-Barbera references and plenty of pop culture stuff that's
a
packed
lot of
into
references.
it. Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of references.
Yeah, I think for me, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the failure, it's like the trying, everybody, like Gary's arc is a really great example of this. He loses his best friend and his partner in crime, right? And he goes through this whole turmoil of like dealing with that loss.
24. Hey, 24. Dude.
Yes, my master. Dude, what is this? I dream of Genie? What do you want?
I need you to check out the Venture compound and deactivate the alarms.
I'm not a poltergeist. I can't move stuff.
Oh, come on! You help me all the time.
Do I? Or do I just let you feel secure enough to trust your intuition?
No! You are real! Real!
And then ultimately, becomes such a reliable person for the Monarch, and Dr. misses the Monarch. And I think there's lots of that DNA in the show where, these characters, some of them are very shitty, some of them suck, but like they keep trying and they keep doing. The Monarch keeps going after Dr. Venture, and like nothing sets him back, even if the guild won't let him do it. He'll take out everybody in his way.
So, you admit that you were arching Dr. Venture with neither license nor consent from the Guild of Calamitous Intent.
Well, duh! I hadn't even heard of you schmucks yet.
We have pages and pages of complaints, all signed by Dr. Thaddeus S. Venture, and all filed after you registered yourself as a henchman with the guild.
You can't see it, but he's holding them off camera.
So that he can still go after Dr. Venture. So yeah, I think that's what that kind of DNA is what I find most appealing about this show.
I think that in terms of theme, like it's the vulnerability that you see deconstructing like the boy adventure idea. You have to kind of like confront the fact that like they had to go through these very many traumatic experiences. The show never shies away from expressing, especially with Dr. Venture, the vulnerability and the like he doesn't really like healthily talk about his trauma. This isn't a show like how to teach you how to deal with, your dad issues or anything.
So I don't know. Sometimes I wish I could just be a normal kid and go out and play with kids my own age and stuff. The only people I get to hang out with are grown-ups. The only time I get to leave the compound is to go someplace creepy like the Bermuda Triangle. And then I get kidnapped by grown-ups. And I'm not even sure I want to be a super scientist when I grow up anyway. But I feel all this pressure because of my It feels weird telling you all this stuff.
Remember, Rusty, in here I'm your doctor, not your father. Now, let's get back to it, shall we? You were telling me how you're ungrateful for all the opportunities your father's given you, and you blame me for all your problems.
But the fact that he is very aware of like the shit that his dad did to him that fucked him up, and he understands that he doesn't, to a certain point, like he doesn't really understand, how things are supposed to work, but he does understand that something's not necessarily right, especially in terms of the family. And he does talk about that with like his kids and with Brock, and the people around him, which I think is very unique, especially for like the Venture Bros, because usually that's some kind of like internal monologue that, or a solo scene that you would see him like processing those emotions and then coming out over it. But it's more realistic where he complains about it and cries and boo-hoos. And then he's like, okay, I guess I gotta.
Yeah, there's no
deal with
sequence
it.
of him laying on a therapy bed talking to his therapist about those problems. And if there is, he completely writes that person off as a quack when they tell him the answer he doesn't want to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I liked that.
It's an outward struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's the world building makes everything seem realistic within its scope. Like the complex, I love the like complex guild and henching concepts and all. Like there's this whole structure of like a corporation to all of that shit that feels like natural. Like that's like, yeah, I could kind of see that being the stupidity of the way that the things work. And then it's kind of like funny with a hint of like realism and the satire in there, and the show can hit these notes that really you do feel for these characters and you feel for these situations. But I love that it's like the jokes fly in the middle of that you kind of like, you can miss them. They come and go. The references, it doesn't care if you've seen those movies or heard that music or whatever. It's just going to throw it out and then keep going. It really is just like, I always appreciate something where it's like, this is someone, in this case, really two people who think something is funny and they just do that they think is funny. And it's like, it happens to gel with a lot of people because they just have that style. And yeah, it's kind of like never a moment that I feel like, oh, that was a waste of my time. And it just, I always feel like they put such effort into reaching for such a stupid joke sometimes, but I love it. And yeah, I do think that's kind of one of the things that I feel like I missed from this movie is that I quote so many things for Ventures all over the place that so many people don't get. This is definitely an everyday kind of thing. I've not watched the show with my kids for multiple reasons. This is one I won't show my kids yet. We'll get there eventually. But I will show clips because they're just things where I'm like, I just have to share. Like anytime anything is blinking, I'm like, it's on, it's on, it's on, it's off,
It's on, it's off, it's on, off, it's on, it's off, it's on, off, it's on.
That's called blinking, boys.
All the time, every time I see something blinking. And it's that kind of joke like that and the nozzle.
Please do not be alarmed. We are about to engage the nozzle. Please do not move while the nozzle is engaging. Moving will disrupt calibration of the nozzle. Please wait while we calibrate the nozzle. Please do not look away from the nozzle.
Oh yes, do not look away from the nozzle.
Did I love having a joke like that, like breathe, that it just has like the time for that stupidity, or what is it? When Gentleman is like listing off all, they get the note
Colonel
and he's listing off
Gentleman.
like all his favorite board games. Like it's
Well, I
so
think
stupid, but I love
something
it.
with that though is that like the fact they let that joke breathe so much, it takes it away from in universe feeling like a joke and more just like, oh, look at this dumb shit this guy's doing again, and
It's
like
who he is, yeah.
this is just who he is. The nozzle is programmed to tell you to not look away from the nozzle because that's what it does, and that's just how someone designed that in this crazy world.
Yeah, like the only time that the show really takes a second to step aside from itself is during one of the bottle episodes, which one of the most iconic ones I can think of is
The Venture Brothers in Escape to the House of Mummies.
where it just is batshit insanity nonsense. It really, but it's so much fun and so goofy. But even in that, they like deconstruct. Like, that's one of my favorite things too, is the deconstruction of a lot of the things behind it.
That's your thing.
I like, in terms of what I love most about the show, it is the fact that they are actively blending a lot of things from pop culture and thinking about them in the logic of the show and making it grounded in their own reality. But then also deconstructing myths, like these scenes where the two I can think of off the top of my head are the guy that throws the gun in Escape from the House of the Mummies, where he's like shooting bullets at the guy and then he runs out and he throws the gun. And the other henchman is like, you got more bullets, You got to stop throwing those things. And it's like, yeah, I know, but it just looks so cool. Between that and Brock actually seeking out emotional support in Orpheus's spiritual circle.
Yeah, he was just this guy. A guy in a butterfly suit who got in over his head, and I could see it in his eyes that if I let him get away this one time, he'd never come back. But then I also thought, kill him. What kind of way is that?
And they have that mystic who has a translator, and the mystic is just like,
one time, I'm on the Amazon in my canoe, and I see swim the dolphin, the beautiful dolphin. So I slip out of my canoe, and I grab her, this fish, and then I it, this fish.
Hell's that got to do with anything?
Hot dolphin!
You're an idiot. That's like it. The whole bit just building to that mystic wisdom. So absurd. But yeah, like wrapped in all of that breathing jokes is like some heart that's peeling back something else in story tropes or anything else. It's just fun to watch.
I think anything where it's a two-man, where it's just Hammer and Public going back and forth. They love to use that, where it's just like the two of them going on after something has finished, and they just keep going,
while something is happening.
argue back and forth.
Yeah,
just that banter.
Yeah.
I actually so when I was watching their kind of 50-minute interview on this, they talked about their writing process for the show. And I'll just pose the question this way first, and we'll talk about it later. Is there any episode where you can pinpoint that's a Doc Hammer episode and that's a Jackson Public episode?
No.
I'm not that level of fan because I haven't watched like commentary or really gotten into the personalities of the like differences between the two creators. So I'd love for y'all to enlighten me.
Yeah, because what they do is they like hand it off, and then they split up the season and kind of write to the end. It's really interesting process, because I was really fascinated after listening to them for the first couple seasons, be like, how the hell does this all come together? There's no way. Because it's why the recent Marvel movies haven't worked, where they like write the end and the beginning and then like fucking figure it out while they go. And the fact that the two of them are on such a similar wavelength that it works. The later seasons, they just more directly work together because it had to be so integrated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, like I know which episodes were them, but it's hard for me to say which. And they do kind of still collaboratively work because they get in. I think there's a lot that's figured out in the voice booth with this show. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of it too, where it's like, even if it is their original script, once they get it, they let the voice actors be these characters. To me, this is Warburton's like best role. This is, I love him in the Tick as well, but I'm like, this is Patrick Warburton. To me, will always be Brock. And I'm like, because I think he gets to add to that character and how he thinks it is and what it is and take it in directions. So it's tough too, where I'm like, I think there is just so much of a collaborative effort here.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there was a time I was at a anime convention, and Michael Stanternaklis, I probably butchered his last name, was there speaking, and he was talking about his experiences, voicing Dean and others on Venture Bros, and he talked about like the first time he was in a booth and with Patrick Warburton, and like he came in and was like super just casual and like kind of like just came up and like seemed like kind of unprofessional, and Michael's like, what's with this guy? And then he just kind of comes in and just like kills his lines and like does it in such a like the only he could do it that kind of way. And he was just like, oh wow, like this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, you earned that swagger, Patrick Warburton. You earned it. I can't tell the difference either between the shows. When I was listening to them talk about their process, they said that like Doc Hammer and Jackson Public will work in the same room, but they'll write on completely different sheets, and they basically both just say, look, by the time you get to this part, I need these characters to be here and I need them to be wearing something. I don't give a shit how you do it. And then they take all of that and like merge it into a page, and they like touch it up a little bit, and then they're just done. But it gets like, oh, this episode's written by, Doc Hammer. This is written by Jackson Public. And the only real differentiator they said is that Jackson Public follows a 3-act structure, or usually tries to follow that. And Doc Hammer is like, I just go by kind of feeling of, I want
He's a
you to
vibes
laugh,
guy.
I want you to be excited, and then I want you to be like this thing by the time you get to this part. He's like, I don't really care about some of the structure stuff. And they were like, hell, we ended some of the episodes where it was like, oh, we ran out of time. I guess it's act 2. There we go. I'm just so fascinated they can be two separate people and have such a cohesive vision and trust in each other. It's a big testament to the show and to them.
We talked about, who you missed in the show or in the movie specifically. Was there anybody that you think had really good moments that like you didn't expect, or parts of the movie that you felt were particularly great for that character?
Yeah,
we haven't really talked directly about the movie itself.
The movie itself
just on a
has-
venture.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's so entangled with everything.
It really
Yeah,
is. I would say for me, I really did not see the Monarch story ending the way that it did. Like it's just one of those things where like the entire show as it goes on, I was like, I have no idea where this is going to go, because they'd been edging towards the Monarch and Dr. Venture being brothers, or there's some kind of relation there. Just like that whole teased arc of them having something, to see them, I don't know, just like the hatred between the two of them shared over the course of it. I had no idea how it ended. And the fact that it ends with the Monarch being defeated for a moment and then uplifted by Dr. Mrs. the Monarch.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful moment between them, and it ended in the most Venture way possible, with him doing his monologue in the middle of like wheezing and like just reeling from the pain. And the fact that it's
get him an Uber.
all over, the fact that it's all over Doc Venture being pantsed by Dr. Mrs. the Monarch invisibly.
Yes,
it's just like, amazing.
There's a running gag of Dr. Venture getting pantsed. He gets pantsed a lot, or is nude in front of people a lot.
Yeah.
Ever since his was it 16th birthday when he
with the shrink ray.
Great pants. Yeah, I liked Hank as he's grown over the seasons, and we got a lot of Hank in the kind of the right ways here. So I did appreciate that. And absolutely, like Monarch and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch and Gary have all grown so much, and the interaction and really the over the last couple seasons, the kind of conflict of where that went with as Mrs. Monarch. You know, she's gone from sort of a gag character henchman to being the head of the OSI and her own right and power and all that, and how that's kind of like pushed the Monarch to the side. That is all interesting, and I felt like it stayed. Yeah, I feel like that stayed true to the characters throughout this movie. I think that was that was good and worked well.
I mean, my favorite character is Dr. Orpheus. You know, I'm a big fan of him just proselytizing like insane bullshit.
Yeah,
it's the way he talks every time he talks.
Every announcement he makes is great.
If you'd have told me you were going to have a yard sale, I would have brought Dean's ever-growing collection of Applehead dolls.
It's not a yard sale. Its configuration is a portal to the second world.
Sure it is.
So, and I feel like in the later seasons, I don't feel like he was as present. He kind of fell off to the side, especially after they moved, because he wasn't their neighbor anymore. Which makes sense, like people come in and out of your lives, and this isn't like the ensemble cast. This is the cameras are on the Venture family. So it was nice, like seeing them reappear,
and the triad.
The order of the triad.
We did get a moment of the full triad, but then it just kind of like petered down to
they road trip.
Blackula and
with Jefferson
Dr.
Twilight and Dr. Orpheus.
Yeah, and the sock golem.
Yes.
Chance Stockholm, yeah.
Yep. So I was really happy to see Dr. Orpheus. I do think that the one thing that I didn't really feel was, I feel like Dean didn't get a very conclusive character arc in any way. I mean, Hank comes back from Coma Town and leaves his alter egos or something in the Coma Town.
Oh god, those alter egos.
They're so good. But yeah, he comes back and he has his moment, and he you can clearly see like that he's definitely like matured in some way. And it still feels like Dean is still majorly reeling from like what he did to Hank, and the only thing that he did was like write a letter of remorse, and like that's like the plot thread or the MacGuffin that they use to go find Hank, which is like, yeah, sure, but that you writing that you're super sorry doesn't really mean much. Dean doesn't need to have his moment here. It's okay. It's not like about him also coalescing into like a complete character. Like Hank was the one who the story was following so deeply. But even still, like I feel also I think Dean has an interesting like character, or has interesting character moments of like, because he's posited as the next like venture boy adventure.
It's a speed
Science.
suit, son.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's the next science boy. But even though he doesn't seem to necessarily be all that good at science, or interested in it, and it does feel like while Hank gets to kind of mature into his own fusion of both Brock and like the adventurous venture spirit, it still feels like Dean's just kind of like a whiny little like shitty, like just came out of his emo phase like kid.
Yeah, it's interesting to see them see the two Venture brothers split off because they're so different. I think that's what makes their dynamic so engaging, is that Dean has always been like the neurotic and obsessive one, and Hank has always been happy-go-lucky.
He got all the
and
nerves.
all of the yeah, and to see that whole, because I feel like the part of Hank's journey is a journey of maturity. Like Hank even kind of talks about like needing to grow up at some point. Dean, when he discovers they're clones, has that whole crisis of faith and immediately just goes into this like, I fucking reject everything. I hate all of this. And he tries to grow up as fast as possible and like launch himself far away from his dad. And it just creates this whole cycle of trauma and abuse. And to the point where like, I think whenever Hank is in the coma at the end of the 7th season, Dean is, as he's reading that letter, he's like, I just wish we could go back to what we used to do, to the things that we used to be and how we would adventure and do all these Go Team Venture stuff together. They stopped doing the Go Team Venture thing after a while.
Man, what's your hurry? What's your slowy? You've gone soft on me, Henry Allen, so-called venture. You used to be all Go Team Venture, but now you're all Go Team Boobies.
I was hoping that it was going to end on them doing the Go Team Venture or something like that.
That kind of did.
Yeah.
Did
the
they?
Post credits.
Yeah.
Did you stick around the
okay.
post credits scene?
They do the thing.
Doc has like an incubator, like a
Oh, you're right.
incubator.
That's right. Actually, we noticed in the movie early on when they're going to their third brother,
Dermot.
Yeah, when Hank's going to Dermot to like have him come and help, and he's kicking around all his trash trying to get to the computer. He actually kicks the incubator, like aside, and I looked at that and I was like, I don't remember the fuck this thing is, like this weird like octopus tank. What is that? And then the cutscene that was their little like incubator tank, which is very interesting that he just kicks it away because he's so interested. He's looking for his mom. Kind of technically finds it there, right?
Yeah. So much is just planted throughout, and it was kind of funny, like the way that they peel back parts of the layers. We talked earlier about how like all the stuff in season 1 makes an appearance in like much later seasons and has justification for it to completely change how you might experience those parts of the actual show. Like I can't watch the Phantom Spaceman episode again without thinking
Phantom
of the
Spaceman.
hate Phantom Spaceman. He's a jerk. Without thinking of the problem light. It's not the problem light. It's the problem. And what's inside of it. And it's like, oh my God, there's so much here that's now under the covers of it. Doc Hammer said that he wanted to do an episode where they took you through the life of a henchman that had been murdered and show you like all of his family and like everybody that that loved him. And like he was like, yeah, we wanted to do it after like one of those episodes, but Jackson Public was like, yeah, they did it in Austin Powers though. It was a deleted scene from the first one. He was like, shit.
Well, they kind of had the least the life of a henchman from like being a part of Monarch's army and
Yeah.
then going onto the battlefield.
They
and
had,
dying.
they had
Yeah.
Venturstein. Venturstein was that.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It wasn't the like before and maybe after henchman.
Yeah. Well, I did actually have one other question, and it's around the movie itself. Do y'all think that it's better to have rushed closure or a full stop cancellation for a show? Like, I know like Firefly has like Serenity. This has this the Radiant Heart of the Baboon.
So wait, the forced cancellation is no closure.
No
Is
closure
that-
at
okay.
all. You just get
I think I prefer no closure than rushed.
Rushed or no closure.
think about if your favorite anime was canceled and you can only have
No,
rushed
that's
closure.
what that's the
Oh, that
thing is that
happens all the
nowadays
time.
it's like
Yeah, exactly.
You,
It's
as
like-
an anime fan, you get
Yeah.
rushed
For-
closure
yeah.
and complete drop off more than you
exactly,
get
yeah.
anything in actual
You'll just be
closure.
lucky if you even get a second season at that point. Yeah, I don't. It's hard to say because I think that I would prefer rushed closure because
See, I like the hope. I like not knowing
I see,
if
yeah.
maybe there's a chance it'll come back, and then like getting all the possibilities in your head of like, well, maybe
Yeah.
this is what would have happened. When
Yeah.
it's forced or rushed, I mean, and it's not satisfying. I feel like that's more common too, where you get the thing they like kind of get out there, and it just doesn't feel right, and it ends too quickly, and they don't let things breathe, and they maybe tie off too many loose ends way too quickly.
Looking
And
at you, Game of Thrones.
yeah.
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 I was gonna say, as a Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire fan, you have both a
Yeah.
hard stop with no resolution
Well,
and a
and
rush
Yeah,
ending.
I
the show
prefer
isn't
the
over
books
yet.
over
There's still more seasons.
I prefer the books over the show, and I think
agree.
yeah.
I think that that's an example where I would say there are creators who really do care, like Hammer and Public, where a rushed ending is really their chance to like put the last word in some way. And then there are creators who are just like, oh, I get one more, like, let me get my check, which is what I feel like Game of Thrones that last season was like, let me get my check and go on this other stuff that I
We're
want
off
to
to
go
do
do.
Star Wars
And
now.
that rushed ending is terrible, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's close it out. And I would rather have had it just be like it's over and left. So I think when
Yeah.
it's a creator who really cares, I really do kind of be like, give them one more season and like tell them ahead of time, one more season or a movie like this and be like, hey, this is going to be it, man. I know this is your passion project. So this is all the time you get. Figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah, this is your Viking funeral.
Well, and actually, that's one thing I liked about this movie is that it didn't feel like they tried to close every loose end. That they
Right,
tried to encapsulate the entire series. They opened more questions in some cases, and there easily could be another season. Like it wouldn't feel out of place, but yet it did have like a sort of nice closure to certain things, and like it felt satisfying. So yeah, I think the creators definitely matter.
Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
artist's last chance to kind of, like at least having that rush ending means that they can still get what they wanted out of it, even
can
if they
control
don't
the
have.
ending.
They can control the ending. Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to leave your art unfinished like that, and if you have the opportunity to end that and at least like see your vision to its completion, I feel like it's better to have the rushed ending than it is to never have a single chance, like like for like Infinity Train or any of these other like suddenly canceled like cartoons that they clearly had great ambitions for, but then they are just like sorry, we don't care about art or storytelling, so
It's about data analytics these days.
yeah, you had 48 episodes, now you only get 24. Sorry, figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I brought it up earlier, but you brought up Infinity Train again, and my heart skipped.
Shattered.
But talking about streaming and where adult animation falls in that, or just animation in general, because plenty of other things have gotten pulled as well.
Yeah.
It blows my mind, just like flat out, regardless of whatever it is, that I'm like, we're in a content war. That's been the whole fucking thing from the start. Is like, who can jam more content on there? And then there is content they have that's already digitized and they've already previously had available that are just like, yeah, I don't feel like paying the residuals on that. I wanted something else that I guess is cheaper for me that I want to do. And I'll then like devil's advocate myself and be like, I understand the complications of the technology and the hosting and everybody wants it, doesn't want it to load for a long time. You want it to play instantly. And there's, I get it, but, but I'm like, it's there. I would not mind if I went in and I was like, hey, I want to watch Infinity Train. They're like, okay, but hang on, you got to load it. Like, come back in an hour and we'll have it all prepped for you. We're going to pull it out of the deep freeze. At least that there's that option versus it being gone because that never had a physical release. So it's just fucking gone from reality.
I mean, when we bought Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart, we did it through iTunes or Apple, whatever, and like we could start playing it instantly, and that almost felt weird. I wouldn't have mind having to wait for it to like download or something like that because I don't buy a lot of digital movies. If I buy them, it's usually physical. So that experience was kind of odd, and like to your point, I wouldn't mind waiting to watch something if it meant that there was more content available. Even if they had like tiers of content, like this is the stuff that's actively available. This other stuff you have to like download to your machine, and it takes longer because it's on old janky servers or whatever.
Yeah. It's complicated, and it comes into like, I mean, that's a strand that spans out into other mediums too. Like video games have that massive problem where like only 5% of all video games are actively archived digitally in any way, shape, or form. And we're just like constantly losing the rest of them to the digital cloud and companies that don't want to carry them on unless they can make profit on it. And it's just like, what? You can't, what the fuck? Where does it stop?
And there is that, like, at least put it up for sale, because I can understand from a small portion of like the streaming where you're like, well, some rando watches it. Now I have to go back and pay someone for whatever this was. And I pay them more for that than I would for something else. I don't want to do that. But when you put it up for sale, it's just like you bake that into your profit model. Like, okay, this is going to be whatever. That way I can pay the residuals and I get my cut. Like, why not make money because someone would want to buy it? That's the ones where I'm really lost. I'm like, why is that not even just available for sale? And then my example I always point to is like, I can go into Disney Plus and it constantly tells me the Apple Dumpling Gang 2 is available for me to stream.
Ooh,
I guess if everyone that made it's dead, then it's free to stream. I don't know. But why is that there when we know Disney has things that people do want to watch that they're not showing?
Do you think that Hollywood would ever learn the wrong lesson here, like they have with everything else, and decide that they need to hire hit squads to kill the people who receive residuals for the shows they have to? I'm not saying that that's actually what's happening, everybody.
No, they're just waiting for them to all become homeless.
Yeah, I'm also not saying.
Yeah. And that is, and even beyond the animation stuff this last year, but now the strike is over that fact that the residuals from streaming are shittier than they are from the purchasing anyway. And so the fact that it's like, well, I don't want to pay those extra few pennies on this. It's just so strange. And when you're getting back to what as shitty as cable was at this point, it's going to cost us as much to put together as many packages that have shit we're not interested in. Like, this is the same conversation of being like, why am I getting 2 golf channels when all I fucking want is another college football game? I can't get that unless I get these golf channels I don't give a shit about.
Yeah, instead of your cable, it's actually now coming out of your Ethernet cable instead.
There you go.
So there you go. But I think what feels like counterintuitive is that with like the rampant cancellation of, or not even like, I guess, rampant cancellation, but the lack of willingness for places like Netflix to let shows, fly at all. Like, there are plenty of time, shows you hear that like they came around for a single season or had maybe 2 seasons and then they were just dropped, and I feel like that really ruins the confidence of like people who are engaged with watching content on Netflix that isn't, if you wanted to watch like the Great British Bake Off or whatever, like you're fine because it's done and it's over and it's great or whatever. If you wanted to watch something new, you have no confidence that you'll ever, like Venture Bros, right? It was canceled and you had no idea another season was going to go out. And if the show was made nowadays, that would be season 2 maybe. And why would you ever even want to get involved? Because you just know that the heartbreak is going to be so much more than you want to deal with. Like, I didn't want to watch a show to, now know that I that's it. I only get 2 seasons of something that I clearly wanted 4. And it could just be dropped for absolutely no reason, and then kicked off the platform too to boot. So it didn't even exist. And then, by the way, the IP is locked behind, their,
Their contracts and
their
everything.
contracts and stuff. They can't even talk about anything. So I don't know. It's bizarre, and it's honestly quite terrible. Like it feels very stifling.
Yeah, the two factors of like most of the movie and television industry being now run by like actual business suits with data analytics that back all the decisions they make instead of bold risks. And then the other thing of them kind of sitting on any IP or property and being like, when are we going to use
Squatters.
this again? Yeah, they just
Yeah.
squat on it. Like, okay, we secured the rights. That's like how, God, is it Sony did Sony make the Fantastic Four movies? Who made the Fantastic Four movies and
Yeah.
continues to
Yeah,
make
that's
those
they're really
Sony.
terrible.
to hold
yeah.
those rights? Yeah,
Yeah.
Ryan's just itching to see Craven. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I can't wait.
But yeah, it's just one of those like, let's make garbage movies and television shows so we can hold on to rights so we can milk them for more money in the future. And it's like,
Yeah.
you could give it to anybody who would give a shit more. Like,
Yeah.
this is never gonna.
Yeah, but I like with the animation, it's interesting talking about the Venture Brothers because I'm like Adult Swim. Like it happened because Turner was paying no fucking attention, and
Yeah.
and they just with Space Ghost and some of the early stuff like C Lab and Harvey Birdman, it was just like, well, let's take the old animation reels we have and just fucking do whatever we want with them. And then it was like, oh, people are watching. Well, let's actually hire a few people and make something again on a really low budget. And it's like, and more people are watching, and we kind of keep going in an era where like nothing could win after The Simpsons. It's entirely backwards to the way Hollywood thinks about it. It is
Oh.
absolutely cheaper than ever to make literally anything. Anyone can make a movie that can look just as good as even the most expensive movie.
But everything
That-
all at once is made by 4 people, right? 5 people.
Yeah, it's there. And it's the same thing. We can, it can have a AAA game, and there are games that come out there from one developer that are blow them out of the water.
Yeah.
Sometimes in even graphics or quality or whatever, and sometimes there's
Yeah.
simpler ones, but they, like more people put hours into Stardew Valley than they put into a lot of AAA games that came out. And like the lesson you should learn there is like, okay, well maybe we should actually work on our craft and find some really important voices to work with.
Mhm.
Honestly, Mario and Spider-Man cost a lot less than most of the movies that came out and made a lot more than they
Yeah.
did. And Indiana Jones cost 4
$300
times.
million? Yeah.
Yeah, 4.5 times what Spider-Man cost and made less. And once you take into all of the trying to go around and have Harrison Ford talk to everybody and advertisements and billboards and whatever, like the ballooning costs on something like that, it's ridiculous to then not get the returns on it when you're like, why did you make this movie in the first place? You just thought for sure that you're like, well, it's just Indiana Jones, people will show up. Like it's
Yeah.
guaranteed.
People love indie.
Yeah.
Yeah, which maybe back in the day you could. And I think it's funny you talk about magazines. I'm like, because they controlled that,
Yeah.
right? They owned the
Those
magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah, they owned the news. The news didn't run all the time. There wasn't somewhere to go hear random people talk
Yeah.
about a thing, right? You only had their approved outlets. And so people just kind of went to that. And they still think it works that way. And they've kind of been trying to zero in on like, let's just get them to the things we know will be successful and we'll just drive them to just that
Mhm.
and milk it. And it's like, no, people keep going off and giving money to people on Kickstarter for whatever fucking reason. And I don't understand why. Why aren't they coming and watching my movie?
Like the Grinch up on the hill.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time to take a break and say this is sponsored by Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus, where all your favorite shows from Desperate Housewives to, anyways.
I wasn't sure if that was a real
No,
thing.
not at all.
Okay. I was like, oh, hey, this
Oh,
is
no.
sponsored.
No,
Pretty good
I don't think
segue.
anyone would. I don't
Vehemently
think anyone in
don't
any
have-
media would sponsor us.
Yeah. I
They
know.
wouldn't want it at the end.
This
of
is
the
sponsored by
podcast
Raid
either.
Legends.
Well, all of that said and done, 2 final questions to close out here. Would you recommend The Venture Brothers, and would you recommend the Venture Brothers movie that closes it? I think that we already said it at the beginning for the movie, but might as well say it again. Jimmy, would you recommend The Venture Brothers to friend, family, anybody?
Yes, so I would absolutely recommend both. I would actually not recommend starting with the movie,
Yeah.
but I think that's probably pretty obvious to a fan, but to non-fans, there's a movie, why not start there? It's not a great starting point. So yeah, it's a gem. It's a really, really special show, and if you give it a little bit of time, you'll understand why.
Yeah, 100% I recommend Venture Brothers. I think that it manages to capture a really after the first season, let's put a little asterisk on there. It's one of those classic. You gotta watch this number of episodes first, guys. Make it through the first season. If you watch a couple of episodes of the first season and you're not really feeling it, maybe just skip to a couple, because in the beginning it's still pretty episodic, so it doesn't hurt too bad if you just do a little fast forward to see if you're gonna like what happens. And then if you like that, then you can kind of retrograde, go back. But I think that it manages to do a really great job at making a comedy show that doesn't feel stupid. It feels really funny, and I feel like every laugh I have, it earns every single laugh, which is pretty rare, especially for a show that has this number of seasons and multiple movies. Don't start with the movie. Terrible idea. Although I can understand why people would be confused, considering that the movies are not necessarily named in any kind of sequential identifier or anything like that. It's just the brilliance of the Baboon Heart, and you're like, this is cool. All right. Yeah, no, definitely don't skip on the movie either. Just treat it like the eighth season that we'll probably that we're never really gonna get. So and then live with the joy of the Venture Bros in your heart.
Go Team Venture.
Go Team Venture.
Ryan, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I totally recommend the Venture Brothers. I think it really is just a fun ride. The comedy, the style of it. It is that first season. It's kind of trying to find its footing. It is still that satire of the type of show before it kind of hits letting the characters be there. I do think oddly, I don't think it matters if you skip around much until the later seasons where it really does get cohesive, because those first few seasons, there are episodes where you're like, did I miss something? Why is this happening? Definitely what is it? The House of the
Escape from the House of Mummies Part 2.
Yeah,
that's definitely
Part 2 where you're
yeah,
that's exactly, if you just watch an episode out of context, you would feel like that, and that is an episode that is
it's
there,
a different
so
timeline,
really
isn't
matter.
it?
I think you would only, if you get it, if you skip ahead and you're like, oh, I'm enjoying this, you go back and watch it and you only get more depth. I don't feel like you really necessarily lose anything. I agree, the movie doesn't even try to hold your hand at the beginning. Most modern movies will try to be like, oh, okay, this is part 7 of a series. We know people are now showing up. They have no clue what's going on. Let's go back and give them enough to go on. This movie doesn't give a shit about if you know what anyone is or any relation or anything. You need to know coming in.
I honestly forgot a little bit going into it. It's like, wait, where the fuck?
It's like, where are we?
Where did Hank go? What's wrong with Hank? So
yeah,
but yeah, no, and for a Venture fan, this is, I always worry, and just because there was so much time between some of the seasons, if you're going to be able to come back and hit the same feel.
Yeah.
And Arrested Development coming back, they didn't, I think they knew they couldn't, and that's why they changed it towards the end, and at least they tried.
Yeah.
But I feel like Family Guy's one where it's they didn't remember how they made that show, and when they came back, they made something completely different. They forgot how the hell it worked. But I guess you get Hammer and Public together, and they just do what they do, and it didn't matter what else was going on, and whenever you pull them together, they were right back on it. And so yeah, this feels like it just was one day after the end of that last season.
Yeah. I also would recommend it in the exact same order everybody's already recommended it. Please don't watch the movie and then go watch the show. The movie's going to be really confusing, and you're going to miss some of those highs that you probably get if you just watch the show through. I will say I did have a strategy for the first season's approach, which is watch 1 or 2 of the first episodes and then skip to the last 2 episodes, which is the Trial of the Monarch. And there's a lot of they're leading into. They kind of, the Mecha Shiva.
Oh yeah, Mecha Shiva.
And they lead into what season 2 will eventually be, where they have to pick up, and so you can kind of start a little bit easier there. And I feel like season 2 starts with pretty heavy like character stakes of you're like seeing all of this dramatic time because the end of season 1, I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but just like the way that goes, it can hook you.
Yeah, don't spoil, season 1, even though we just spoiled the entirety of the movie.
It's fine. Well, yeah, I didn't spoil the
said
plot beats in the rest of the season, so I want you to experience your highs.
It's the journey.
Yeah, it's about the journey. But yeah, when characters show up and when other things happen, it's delightful. And yeah, to Ryan's point too, I think about a show like, not to say that Futurama is bad every time it's come back, but it's always been just a little bit less magic, and there's a little bit of difference here.
Yeah.
And this show just always hits it out of the park for me.
I feel like there was like one Futurama movie I really enjoyed, and then the other ones weren't that great. And then the seasons they've produced since have been pretty
hit or miss. And yeah. But this has always been really consistent.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say this show, if you give it your time and your patience, like I tried to get into Star Trek: The Next Generation, and people were like, don't watch the first 3 seasons, skip past all that shit and get to season 4 and just go. And I was like, that's such a weird endorsement of your show, but I understand.
The first half is shit.
Yeah, but like for Venture Bros, it is like that first season, it's got some gags that'll come back canonically later. Sure, maybe you can watch that later after you've experienced them in the rest of the show. But honestly, like if you jump in at season 2, you're fine. You'll be good to go. Well, yeah, I'm going to close it out here for the episode. I've been your host, John Garcia, and with me has been our guests, Jimmy and Erika.
Thanks for hosting.
Yes, thank you for having us.
And Ryan King. Ryan, you want to say your name?
Spanakopita.
Spanakopita. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.